All right, good morning. It's Wednesday, and life's going to be good today. I'm looking forward to it. See what goes on. We got lots of things going on at work, so it's kind of fun. I'll be teaching tonight our sermon for Sunday because we're heading out to the mountains for the weekend to hang out with our family, and so I'll be doing that. So tonight I'll be busy teaching, and then ready to stream that live Sunday morning for church. Looking forward to that. We're in a series called "Become" at church, and it's powerful in the 5 movements that God is wanting to take us through. It's really some of the most powerful teaching that I believe the Lord's given to us. It's about the fact that we belong, that we exist, we be. He wants us to belong. Once we belong, he wants us to become something. When we become something, we behold his glory, and we behold him in that sense. We look like him. And then once we do that and we collectively gather together, then we are building the kingdom of God. And so that's how that goes, and it's powerful truth. And so we'll be looking at that Sunday. But today, man, we are in the book of Luke, chapter 9. Looking at one of the miracles. There's, I think, really only a couple of miracles that every gospel speaks of, and this is one of those. And so, man, if you got a Bible, we're going to be in chapter 9. It's beginning in verse 11, really. And so let me just kind of bring you up to speed. Jesus sent the 12 out, right? And so he divided them into groups of 2. So you've got 6 little teams heading out into the cities, and they've been given authority to cast out demons, to cleanse leprosy, to heal the sick, right? These things are what they were doing. And so they went out and they taught. They were teaching kingdom principles. They were teaching repentance. They were teaching kingdom love. They were teaching, the reality of faith in the coming Messiah. For that, all of that is what they're teaching. And Jesus also, Matthew tells us that Jesus also then began to go and to teach in their cities. Like he sent them out to cities, and then Jesus went and spoke in the apostles' cities and shared the gospel as well. So he's doing that. Herod begins to gossip collect the gossip of what's going on, and he wants to see Jesus. Now he wants to see Jesus, I think, with the means to kill him. But at some point, in the trial, he's really curious and grateful that Pilate brings him up there so that he can meet Jesus. So I think just the only reason I'm thinking that is because here's a paranoid leader who already killed John the Baptist. Now, some of that he was coerced into, but he did not like John. He did not like John disrupting his immoral lifestyle. And so that was going on. The disciples returned during this time, which is what we looked at yesterday. And so it says that verse 10, when the apostles returned, they gave an account to him of all that they had done. And taking them with him, he withdrew privately to a city called Bethsaida. Now, so we told you yesterday, so they get in a boat. They're in Capernaum. They get in a boat, and they scoot kind of the shoreline. It's just easier to do that than it is to walk if you're just resting and you're weary. And so he knew they were, so they jump in a boat, they scoot over, and then they head up inland to Bethsaida, which is at the very top of it's at the top of the Sea of Galilee, and about a few miles offshore of that. And so they're up north in huge Gentile territory. They've left Herod's rule. They're now in the rule of Herod's brother, whom he stole the man's wife, niece. And so he's in that territory of that king at this point. Whether he did that intentionally to get away from Herod, I don't know. It's just interesting that Herod's mentioned in this context, right in the sandwich of these things. So they get in the boats and they retreat. Great crowds of people see them jump in the boat, and so they're thinking, man, we'll get over there to them. I think it was about half as fast to get there by boat than it was by land. And so it says literally that they ran. Mark tells us that they ran ahead of them. So they're running around the coastline as the boat is sailing, and so they get on shore. It says this, but the crowds were aware of this and followed him, and he welcomed them and began speaking to them about the kingdom and curing those who needed healing. So they catch up to him, and he is, it looks like that he and his disciples have had just a little retreat as you kind of read all the gospel accounts of this, and then the people show up, and so he welcomes them as he would, right? He's not like, oh man, here they come again. They just won't leave me alone. This is what I love about the compassionate Jesus, right? It says that he felt compassion. Mark 6 says that. Matthew 14, the accounts in their realm, says that he felt compassion. Right? I love the term that it's felt, because there's this, that it just lets us know the emotion that Jesus has for his people from that human perspective. We know that God emotes and he has emotions. God gets angry and God gets moved by compassion and all of those things. But here you see the creator of the universe encased in flesh, weary from all of the travels and all of that. It's been about 18 months of just go, really. That he sees a crowd and he's just moved with compassion. This is the great shepherd, knowing that his sheep, his creation, just needs some good loving and some caring for. And listen, it wasn't about whether these were believers or not. We're going to read. We will learn later that in John, after he says he speaks to them, that many of these quit walking with him, and so we know that they weren't all believers, but they all received this share of compassion. I think it's important to understand that. Like, Jesus isn't discompassionate to the world. He's not like, you're not my people, I don't really care about you, but when you come to me, then I'm going to love you. He feeds the world. He brings healing to the world. This was without merit. There were several of these healings. He didn't ask, well, so what do you think about me? He just knew that he was going to heal the widow and the dead son in that casket. Neither one were crying out to him in that sense, but yet he showed up and he brought healing. I think it's important that we see that, and so. They're there for signs and healing. That's what John tells us. That's why they came. And so he's kingdom speaking. That's what it says in verse 11. He's speaking of the kingdom of God and curing those who had the need of healing. So there's a huge crowd here. We're going to learn in a minute that it was 5,000 men that had gathered, assuming that the majority of them had wives. You could add, let's say, 4,000 to that. We're at 9. And assuming that in that they had a couple of kids, you're talking potentially somewhere around 20, could be more. Could be 20,000 people on this hillside that have gathered and come over there. We know there were children involved because there's going to be a little boy who's going to provide the substance for Jesus to really create an incredible miracle, right? So there's about 20,000 people on this hillside, and all of them have various needs, and they've all got aches and pains and some sort of diseases and things like that. And so they're coming, right? And he's in this huge crowd of 20,000. He didn't have a green room, waiting for the crowd to gather and then walk out and teach. He was among them. That's why Peter says to the elders of the church that are scattered, he tells them, shepherd the flock of God that is among you, right? What's he saying there? That you're going to be involved in the lives of people. So this whole thing about, you're too good to hang out with the crowds and you appear on stage and you do your thing and then off you leave. That's just silliness. It has nothing to do with the compassion of the great shepherd. He's among the people. He's approachable. They're coming to them, and he's healing. This wasn't some mass healing. He didn't take his tunic off and sling it across the crowd and everybody fall back into some sort of healing thing. This is them coming up, just like the woman who was pressing in on him, who touched the hem of his garment. And so he's healing them, and this is what's going on. So they're doing that, and he's teaching kingdom principles, and maybe he's doing things at the same time. Maybe they're coming up, and he's teaching, and he sees them, and he gives them that gaze, and he heals them, but whatever's going on, this is an incredible hillside event. Just put yourself there, right? You're standing there. You've walked a good bit to get there, and then you see him, and he's just like. He's just enthralled with compassion, and so he sees them coming, and he's laying his hands on them, or he's speaking power over whatever he's doing, however that worked in those days. He's doing that, and he's speaking kingdom truth here. And so this lingers on. And so then verse 12, it says, now the day was ending, and the 12 came up to him and said, dismiss the crowd. So the day is ending. It's probably 4 or 5 in the afternoon, maybe. When the sun is getting ready to set. I'm not sure exactly when it sets there, but, depending on the time and the season, the sun's nearly setting. He's like, hey man, They walked a long way out here, Jesus. You might want to send them back. They got to find lodging in the little town here now, and they're going to have to find some food, right? And so this is now now we're at the picture. So let's just kind of see this story unfold. It says, now the day was ending, and the 12 came up and said to him, hey, let's dismiss the crowd so they may go into the surrounding towns and villages and countryside and find lodging and get something to eat, because here we're in a secluded place. He goes, look, there's no Mickey D's here. There's no Chick-fil-A, right? There's not really a lot of. We're just out in the, we're out in the hillside, man. It's like, it's like we're in the woods. There's not a lot of stuff around here to eat. We need to get them back to a town, and so and you appreciate that compassion, right? You kind of see that it's rubbing off on them. Now they can't see yet with the eyes that Jesus sees, but at least they have this compassion, right? It's not just all about them, like, well, who's the greatest? And, man, let's high five this and that about how great we are. This was his disciples coming back off the road, spending time with Jesus, seeing the incredible miracles that they witnessed, that they were a part of. And what the gospel did is they shared it with these people, which is probably the reason why some of this crowd was there, because of what the apostles did. And so they look at Jesus and they go, hey, let's send them on back now, right? And so Jesus looks at them and says, but he said to them, how about this? How about you give them something to eat, right? But they said, man, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, to fill in the gaps, right? This is the great setup. Jesus knows what he's about to do. Philip, Jesus, according to John, looks at Philip and says, where are we to buy? Where are we to buy? So they said, hey, let's go, send them. She's like, how about we buy bread for them? Where are we going to get that? And Philip's going, Lord, 200 denarii. Now that's a whole lot of money. 200 denarii won't feed all these people. This is silly. How are we going to even get it up here? I mean, it's like, that's a lot of food. Now, Andrew says, Andrew must be like looking around going, there's a little boy that has 5 loaves and 2 fish, right? Now, lest we wonder, that's probably like a loaf doesn't necessarily mean a loaf like we think of it. A loaf, this thing could have been anything from like a dried biscuit or cracker, so to speak. And the fish could have been something like a sardine, like salted, like it's just kind of their snack, right? And so it's possible that it was something like that. But whatever it was, Jesus is having this conversation with them, and it's I call it the great setup. He says, you give them something to eat. But they said, man, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless perhaps we go and buy food for all these people. And that's when he says, so where are we going to go buy this bread for all the people? And it says, for there were about 5,000 men. Now, but he said to his disciples, hey, listen, how about we do this? How about you just get them in groups of 50, right? 50 each. Now, one writer says 50 and 100. That doesn't mean somewhere in 50 and somewhere in 100. It means 50 groups of 100, which would be 5,000 people. So Jesus is saying, hey, why don't we just you can go ahead and get them in groups. Now, at this point, if you're one of the apostles, you're like, what's going on? What are we doing? I mean, has he got something hidden up here that we don't know about? But he gets to verse 13. He said, you give them something to eat. For there were about 5,000. But he said to his disciples, have them recline in groups of about 50 each. They did so, and they had them all recline. Now, listen, Jesus is getting ready to just do this amazing thing, right? He's getting ready to give them a feast. Listen, when I think about this, I think about two, 3 things that come to mind. One, just the compassion of God in all of those things, right? He knew this was going to happen. Let's honestly evaluate the fact that as he walked this earth, he was praying and doing only what the Father had given him to do. He knew that he was going to be on this hillside with them. He knew that he was going to feed them, and that the apostles would learn some things, and so would these people. And so here's this gift of food, which is crucial throughout the scriptures, right? I mean, at the very beginning in Genesis 1, and it shall be for you food, right? This is what he says when he's speaking to Adam, and this will be for you to food. And And then you begin to see it all the way through there. Meals are constantly happening. It was manna in the wilderness. What was he doing? Feeding the people, right? And so you would see it constantly. Solomon was like, man, at the end of the day, there's nothing like gathering with family to eat and to drink and to be merry, because this is our lot this side of the sun. And so there's this unimaginable thing. You think about the gift of our body and what it does. If we take in food, it somehow turns it into energy so that we can live and sustain ourselves. And we have to repeat this process. There's always a trust that God will give us food, right? Give us this day our daily bread. What's that concept going on there? Every meal reminds us that we have a need of the Most High, that He has to provide food from the earth or from the animal kingdom or the birds of the air, however it is that we're going to do it. But He has to provide that. And we consume that, and we need that daily. We eat three, 4 times around here, but maybe it's just one meal, right? But it's an incredible thing that happens. And so this is almost like this holy thing. It's a gathering of souls to hear truth and to share a meal. Man, it's powerful. Now, so verse 16 says, so they're obviously giving him the fish and loaves. And verse 16 says, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them and broke them and gave them to the disciples. What does your Bible say? Mine says, again and again, to serve the crowd. Just let that soak in. So he's got these, let's say they're a little 2 sardines. Let's say they're big fish. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, right? And there's loaves. Let's say there's 5 loaves. So he's holding these things up, and he's blessing it, right? Praying before the Father. And then the apostles are there, and he breaks off some of the fish, and he breaks off some bread, and he gives it to Andrew. And he does it again for Peter, and he does it again for James and John and Bartholomew and Philip, right? And he begins to hand all of these out, even Judas. Thomas, right? And so, but it says he's breaking it again and again. Now, how many pieces can you break that into? It's growing. This is a creative miracle. This is God Himself creating food out of really nothing and multiplying it so that what was a little boy's snack fed potentially 20,000 people with leftovers. Just let that sink in, right? So there is this common grace, and I want us to see that it's flowing. The teaching was being given on that hillside to anyone who would gather. They could all hear. Now, whether they had ears to hear, I don't know. But they could all hear the truth. They all were being healed as God, as they came to Him for that. And then they all ate because He met those needs. I just think it's important that we see this compassionate side of Jesus. Now, so this miracle is incredible. We get to verse 17. And it says, and they all ate and were satisfied. Because listen, just in case that you thought, this is why Luke wants to be sure that you understand. It's not like that, well, they each had a little crumb. Oh, that was good. Kind of like the little wafers we have at communion, and that they go, that was good. No. They ate until they were satisfied, right? I mean, they just ate until they were stuffed. It was like a buffet, an endless buffet. They could have as much as they wanted. Now, when the crowd was satisfied, and the broken pieces which they had left over were picked up. So what Jesus did then is say, hey, grab these baskets. Y'all go collect the leftovers. Now they got to be thinking to the devil, this is insane. There's I'm looking at a sea of 20,000 people. That's like standing in kind of some of the smaller football stadiums around the world that hold 25 or 30. The smaller little colleges are dotted around. And it's like looking at a stadium and realizing you had 5 crackers and 2 sardines, so to speak. And they're all stuffed, couldn't have another bite, right? And he says, go collect the leftovers. And each one collects a basket, right? 12 baskets full. Not like, the garbage can's a little. No, 12 baskets full, right? Man. So what's the conclusion? I mean, it's just insane. They leave. They see him get in a boat. And so they began to head back where they're going. At this point, once they do that, Jesus is leaving. They're getting in a boat. Peter's going to walk on water. He's going to send them ahead. We're not going to look at that because it's all of the other Gospels. The people will, like little seagulls, jump around until they can see Jesus again and find more food. And many are going to walk away from him when he challenges them that day that unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part of me. right? They came for more food. He said, the only reason you're here now is because your bellies are full. This is the conversation that we won't have because this is what's going on. But what a powerful event just to remind us that God's a good God. He meets our need for knowledge and understanding. It's called the scriptures, the sacred text. He meets our need for food. He's given it to us in abundance, right? And he meets our needs for healing as we cry out to him and ask him to do so. What a great study. Lord bless you guys. Can't wait to share more of this with you in the morning. Have a great one.